After hosting Christmas for the entire family, my mother pulled me aside and whispered, "You'll never be good enough. Look around, no one even noticed you tried." That night, I cried into a sink full of dirty dishes. The next year, I spent Christmas on a beach with friends who actually cared while my family sat around an empty table, wondering where I was. I live in Boise, Idaho. Winters here aren't gentle. By early December, everything is frozen, including your soul if you're already feeling worn out. That year, I was 46, divorced, living in a 2-story home I could barely afford since my ex walked out. He left 3 years earlier, right after I turned 43. Said he was done trying and didn't want to feel trapped anymore. Whatever. He left, and I cleaned up the mess. He moved in with a woman 10 years younger. I kept the house and the bills and the silence that came with it. My daughter was in college in Montana. My son, still a teenager, decided to spend Christmas with his dad that year. I didn't blame him. So when my mom called me the week before Thanksgiving and said, not asked, said I'd be hosting Christmas, I just nodded into the phone. She said it like it was a favor to me. "You've got that big place and no one to fill it," she said. That's my mother. Always finding ways to jab at the soft spots and call it just being honest. I didn't have it in me to argue. Arguing with my mom is like punching a wall. You only end up hurting yourself. So I cleaned. I planned. I shopped with money I didn't have. I was working overtime and still had to use a credit card for decorations and groceries. I spent hours online looking for table runners and new silverware because I knew my aunt would say something snide if I didn't match the forks. I scrubbed every baseboard in that house. I hung lights. I bought new hand towels for the bathroom with little reindeers stitched on them. I borrowed chairs from a neighbor and rented a big roasting pan from a party supply store. And on Christmas Day, I cooked. I roasted a 17-pound turkey. I made 2 trays of stuffing, one with sausage, one without for the vegetarians. I baked green bean casserole, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, sweet potato pie, and 3 different desserts. I served wine, eggnog, and cider. I even made hot chocolate for the kids. 23 people came. The cousins, the aunts, the uncles, even my brother and his new girlfriend. They brought their kids. No one brought a dish. Not even a bottle of wine. The men planted themselves on my couch and argued about football. The women hovered in the kitchen for a few minutes, criticized my gravy, and left. My cousin Tanya sniffed at the centerpiece I made and said, "It's cute. Very. Pinterest." No one offered to help. No one offered to clean. I never sat down to eat. I was up, pouring drinks, refilling trays, keeping the kids from breaking things, smiling through gritted teeth. After dinner, I started clearing plates. My knees ached. My back hurt. I was holding in tears so tight I thought they'd start leaking out my ears. Then my mother walked in. She came up behind me while I was scrubbing a pan in the sink. The house was buzzing with voices and Christmas music and the sound of wrapping paper being torn to pieces. She leaned in, close enough that her breath touched my ear. "You'll never be good enough," she whispered. "Look around, no one even noticed you tried." Then she walked off like she hadn't just gutted me. I stared into the dishwater. It was cloudy with grease. My hands were shaking. I cried. Right there, into the sink, while holding a soap sponge in one hand and a wine glass in the other. I cried so hard my chest burned. I cried because it was Christmas, and I was alone in a house full of people who only showed up to take. They left around 9 p.m. without saying goodbye. Some didn't even say thanks. I found dirty glasses in the bathroom and someone had spilled red wine on the rug. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw the note. "You forgot to serve dessert." Written on a torn napkin. In my mother's handwriting. Next to a pie I made from scratch. That was the moment I decided I was done. I didn't tell anyone I was done. I just let the thoughts sit in my chest for a few weeks, burning slowly like a match no one put out. I went back to work the day after Christmas. Didn't talk about the holiday. When coworkers asked how it went, I gave the usual answer, busy but nice. That was easier than the truth. Around mid-January, my mom called. "I'm planning your birthday dinner," she said, like it was her job. "You'll have it at your house again, right?" I looked at my phone for a long second. I could hear her waiting, impatient as ever. "No," I said. Silence. "What do you mean, no?" she asked. "I mean I'm not doing anything. I'm tired. I need a break." She scoffed. "A break from what? You're by yourself most of the time." I hung up without saying another word. It was the first time in my life I'd ever hung up on my mother. My hands were shaking afterward, but I didn't call back. She didn't either. By spring, the phone calls had slowed to once every few weeks. By summer, it was just the occasional group text. No one asked how I was. No one thanked me for Christmas. Not one apology. Not a word. That's when I started planning. I told my friend Heather, someone I met through work, who had invited me to beach trips before, but I always said no. "I'm in this year," I told her in July. "I want to spend Christmas with people who don't make me feel like garbage." She grinned and said, "You won't regret it." I booked a house with her and 2 other women. Right on the beach in California. 5 days, Christmas Eve to the 29th. No family. No phone calls. No drama. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Not even my kids. I didn't send out invites. I didn't remind anyone about Christmas. I didn't answer calls in December. When Christmas Day came, I was sitting on a beach with my feet in the sand and a cold drink in my hand. I wore sunglasses and a sundress. I laughed until my ribs hurt. I helped cook dinner with people who thanked me when I passed the pepper. Around 3 p.m., my phone started blowing up. It was my cousin, "Where are you?" Then my aunt, "Are you okay? The house is locked." Then my brother, "Did you change the plan?" Mom's freaking out. I didn't reply. Then the big one came in, my mother. No greeting. No emotion. Just, "Where the hell are you? Everyone is here. The food isn't ready. You didn't answer the door. What kind of stunt is this?" I stared at that message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and went back to the kitchen where my new friends were making margaritas and singing along to old 90s music. Later that night, I posted a photo to Facebook, me on the beach, holding a drink, smiling. Caption, "Best Christmas I've had in years." I knew they'd see it. The fallout wasn't instant. My phone stayed quiet for 2 days after that photo. I thought maybe they'd finally gotten the message. Then came the guilt parade. My brother called first. I let it go to voicemail. He left a long message. "You really blindsided us." Mom's blood pressure spiked. "People came from out of state. You could have told us." I deleted it without listening to the end. Next came a group text from my cousin Leslie, "We had to eat pizza. On Christmas. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" I almost laughed. They were embarrassed. Not sorry. Not reflective. Embarrassed. Then came the lie. It started small, an email forwarded to me from a distant cousin in Colorado I barely talked to. Subject line, "Everything okay?" Inside was a forwarded email from my mother to the extended family. She wrote that I had canceled Christmas at the last minute due to a personal crisis, and that I was working through some issues and needed prayers. She made it sound like I had a breakdown. Like I was mentally unfit. That's when I snapped again. I sent out one group message. Simple. Sharp. There was no crisis. I didn't forget Christmas. I chose not to show up. After last year, after everything you all took and never once appreciated, I decided I'd rather be alone than treated like a servant. And for the record, I'm not the one who needs prayers. I hit send. The responses came in like a swarm of bees. Some tried to play nice. We didn't know you felt that way. You should have said something. Some were hostile, way to ruin a 30-year tradition. You embarrassed Mom. You're acting like a spoiled teenager. And then, radio silence. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. My daughter called me in February. She said she'd heard from Grandma that I was having a hard time. I told her the truth. She didn't say much at first. Just listened. Then she said, honestly, Mom. I saw what they were like. Every Christmas, you were the only one working while everyone else drank and complained. I'm surprised it took you this long. It was the first time in months I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy. But the story doesn't end there. One day in March, I got a knock on my door. It was my Aunt Judy. The one who always brought her little yappy dog and never cleaned up after it. She was standing on my porch holding a Tupperware of lemon bars. Peace offering, she said. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway. She looked uncomfortable. Your mom's not speaking to anyone right now. She's blaming the whole family for what happened. Says we pushed you too far. I raised an eyebrow. And you came here to say she's rewriting the story, she said. Telling people you've been unwell for years. That you're unstable. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because of course she was. Then Judy handed me an envelope. I didn't want to come, but I think you should see this. Inside was a copy of a letter my mother had sent to the family's church group. It said I'd gone off the deep end, and had cut all ties due to paranoia and stress. She asked for the church to keep her in your prayers while she manages her daughter's mental decline. She even called me emotionally disturbed. I stared at that letter for a long time. I felt sick. It was one thing to be cruel in private. To whisper that I wasn't good enough, to insult me behind closed doors. But this? She was trying to destroy my name. Make me look like some broken woman who couldn't be trusted. I thanked Judy, took the lemon bars, and closed the door. I didn't eat them. I threw them straight into the trash. That night, I pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years. It was full of old photos, journals, and emails, decades of proof that I'd been the one holding the family together while my mother stood above it all like some cold, bitter queen. There were birthday cards she never signed. There were emails she sent calling me dramatic when I asked for help after my divorce. There was a photo of me cleaning up at Thanksgiving, while everyone else smiled for pictures in the other room. I took everything. And I wrote my own letter. I didn't hold back. I wrote about every year she put me down. Every holiday she used me. Every comment she whispered like a knife to the ribs. I wrote about the Christmas she called me invisible. About how I cried into a sink full of dirty dishes while she sipped wine and made jokes. I wrote about how none of them noticed. None of them helped. None of them cared until I left. I attached screenshots. Old messages. The napkin that said, "You forgot to serve dessert." Then I sent it. To the entire family. To her church group. To anyone she lied to. And then, I blocked her. Every number. Every account. I erased her from my life. The fallout hit within 24 hours. I got calls from cousins who never even liked me, saying, I had no idea it was like that. My uncle wrote me a message that just said, I'm sorry. And my brother Mr. You Ruined Christmas texted me late one night and said, you didn't deserve any of that. I was wrong. But the one that hit hardest? My daughter. She sent me a video. It was her, sitting in her dorm, holding her phone. Mom, she said. You're not broken. You're brave. I saw it all growing up. I didn't know what to call it, but now I do. You kept this family alive. And I'm proud of you for finally walking away. I cried harder than I did that night in the kitchen. I'd carried guilt for so long. Shame, too. Like if I just tried harder, they'd love me back. But the truth is, some people only love you when you're useful. Some people raise you to feel like a tool instead of a daughter. I didn't speak to my mother again. She sent one final letter months later, handwritten, telling me I had humiliated her publicly, and that I was no longer welcome in the family. I smiled when I read it. That was the first time she ever said I had power. The next Christmas, I stayed on the beach. Same friends. Same laughter. Same sun on my skin. I didn't cry into a sink. I toasted to freedom. And for the first time in my life, Christmas didn't hurt.